Welcome to the Nelson Mandela Foundation. My name is Sumaya Hendricks, and we are really grateful to have partnered and to be able to host the Kulisani Foundation here and all of you. We think engagements like these are incredibly important, where you're able to come together, meet new people, gives you an opportunity to learn, to expand your mind, to share ideas and to be inspired. I wanted to leave you all with a question today. And it's a question that my mom used to always ask me to reflect on, which is, how can I use all the talents that I have to make a contribution in the space that I am in? And so this year, which marks the 10th anniversary of Khalifa's passing, I hope we're all able to be inspired by his legacy, and that we can be inspired to ask ourselves the question, how can we use all the talents we have to make a difference in the space that we are in?
Welcome to the first live show of the InnerView. My name is Bianca Williams. I'm the host today. I'm also the co-founder of Campaign for Girls, and I'm the one that was rooting for you guys, making sure that you are here today so that you can be part of this conversation, which is very, very important for us at Campaign for Girls. Now, I know you guys are all Campaign for Girls members, but for those who don't know, who are streaming from our Instagram channel, Campaign for Girls is an initiative that we started in 2010. Were you guys born in 2010? I just have to make sure. And really the purpose of our initiative is the development of the girl child. That's been the most important thing for us. And we've been doing that through the years, doing different activities and different programs. So I'm very excited that you guys are also here to be a part of the InnerView. The whole purpose of the InnerView is to bring you guys, the aspiring young women, aspiring girls, together with your inspiring African women so that you guys can get to know who they are, what is their story, what is their journey. A lot of the times, you guys probably see the news or you hear from someplace or another. I'm not sure if TikTok also talks about these kinds of ladies, but I know you will see a title and you will see someone is the CEO of such and such a company. Someone is the first Black woman to do this for that company, for this profession. And it sounds like they are made and they are so much further from where you are. But these women are just like you guys. So for us, it was very important to bring you in the same room and really bridge the gap so that you are a step closer to the women who are just a little bit ahead of you, and you can be part of a conversation where they can share their journey, their life experience, and they can pass on some very important lessons and stories and knowledge and wisdom to you guys. I'm going to introduce you guys to our guests of honor today. On my right, now when I met this lady, it was 2010, and we were trying to find a partner for Campaign for Girls, and she's the one that was put forward, and they said, you go and you represent us. And when she was sitting across from me, I thought we were the same age, but I was completely wrong. I think because of her youthful looks, obviously, and her energy and spirit, I just thought, this person is actually my age. But she is actually an investment executive at Wiphold, which is a Black women-owned company that was started in 1994. That was quite a while ago. And she is such a valuable member of the Wiphold family. Not only that, but she has even extended herself to be the chairperson of our foundation, which is Kulisani Foundation. And sticking true to how she feels about development, she also is the chair of the Distel Foundation. So development is her thing. Please welcome all the way from Eskawini, Miss Gugu Dingaan. Right next to her, we have got Nontobeko Ndhlazi. She is the Group Financial Officer at Wiphold as well. Now, Nontobeko is as cool as a cucumber. She's like one of the coolest people. I've never seen her stressed. She doesn't break a sweat. But her approach to business is very similar to her approach in her own personal life as well. She really does believe in investing her time, her energy, as well as her money when it comes to supporting Black women businesses and young women as well. So please welcome all the way from Durban, Miss Nontobeko Ndhlazi. All the way from Mthatha, Miss Buhle Hanise. Buhle is also known as the authentic leader. You see, she's here in bright yellow. She's very bright. She lights up the room and she's got that youthful energy and spark as well. So when I told her about this, she said, I'm going to be there. She is the Chief Operating Officer of Business Restructuring at BDO, and she's the President of the African Women Chartered Accountants Forum. So for all of you guys who want to be CAs, who want to be in finance, and even those who want to be in engineering, this is the right place to be. So please welcome Ms. Buhle Hanise. Okay, so we're going to go straight into it. Now, ladies, whenever we talk to people who are part of our programs, the first place of contact for us is knowing what your name is, what it means, and what's the story behind it. So, Gugu, please do let us know.
My full name is Gugu. Gugu means our pride, our treasure, our precious one. So I must have given my parents that feeling when I was born, that even though I was a third born, that I deserved to be called Guguletu. It's such an honor to have had that name given to me. I don't know why, but I'm hoping that each day that I'm leaving, my mom, my late dad, they're able to see why they named me that.
Thank you.
I love that you asked that question, Bianca, because it's one of the things I love about our African names. They've got stories behind them. So I'm Nontobeko Sanelisiwe. Nontobeko means mother of humility, the humble one. My parents, I think it was just the vibe they got when I was born to name me that. And then Sanelisiwe means we are satisfied. I'm number 3 or 4, 3 girls and 1 boy. So they were longing for a boy, happy to have me, but they were like, Sissy, right. And then the next child was a boy. Beautiful.
And Buhle, noma Hanise. And the reason why I had to mention my surname is that why did my grandmother give me this Buhle name? Guys, I was as dark as your blazers. Buhle, you know, most everybody thinks when you talk about beauty, it needs to be bright and colorful. I'm like, why? And Umakulus told me the story. Apparently, my grandfather decided to take a second wife, and my grandmother was not happy. She left, went to Butterworth, which is about 2 hours away from home. So when my dad heard me, he's not going to give me a name until she comes back home. That was apparently a way for them to bring the family back together. So igama lam nguBuhle benkosi noma Bunga, because I brought the family back together. I apparently stayed for 2 weeks without a name. I stayed for 2 weeks without a name because Umakulu was refusing. I was like, she's got another grandmother. And my dad was like, we are Buya.
Yeah. All your names are actually very indicative of who you are in personality as well. I think I'm going to start actually with you, Buhle, because you brought something up which is very important. And I'm sure that our young women can relate when you're talking about beauty and what it means. So when you were younger, when was the first time that you actually looked at yourself and looked at others and thought that you were not beautiful? When did you have that kind of question about your looks and what beauty is to you?
And it actually happened, hey? I can't really remember exactly when. My mom, guys, looks like a colored lady. And I always associated beauty with being light-skinned and all of that. And I think that's when the conversation with my grandmother also happened, to understand where did this name come from and why do I look different to the rest of the family. Actually, I thought I was adopted. And I look exactly like all my dabses. My dabses are aunt or ragadi, ne? And I was actually I do look like my dabs. What was going on? But one thing that my parents actually gave me the confidence to embrace who Buhle is and how I look. Recently, I cut my hair. Took me a long time to be able not to grab that wig and rush. I was like, but this is my natural self. So it happened very early on in my life, Bianga, where I was always assured that ubuhle bam, the way that I am, it's individualistic. I mustn't try and look like my mom. I mustn't try to look like my sister. I mustn't try to look like my friend. I must embrace who I am.
Definitely. Nonto, you are also a mother of a daughter. I know everybody here is a mother. I just want to know, growing up, what were the beauty standards that were, brought up onto you, and how do you now define beauty and speak and have those kinds of conversations with your daughter around beauty?
I asked myself the same question that you were asking her, because I'm also dark-skinned. I was darker when I was younger. And I realized that in my family, it was about the brains, it was about the intellect. So I didn't consider myself pretty, but I shoved that and I was like, but at least I'm clever. Type thing. So that's always been what I run with, my braids and what have you. And it's only probably in my 30s where I started coming into my own. My daughter, who's 14 now, Nogukanya, is gorgeous and brainy.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with my upbringing, I always lead with her brains.
Mm-hmm.
After a while, I felt, she's going to think she's not pretty though, because not beautiful, because I never speak about that. So to answer your question, I really try to highlight all the things, including the beauty that we see at first encountering a person. Yeah.
I think it's very important for young people to actually know that beauty comes in different ways. So, obviously there's the beauty that you have, the physical beauty, but a lot of it actually the contribution, in fact, the sustenance, how to sustain even your physical beauty comes from your inner beauty. Being able to, express yourself in that way, whatever it is that you find that is valuable about you is the actual thing that makes you beautiful. Invest not just on what's on the outside, but mostly what's on the inside, because when what's on the outside changes, what's on the inside is what comes through. So for you, Gugu, when you were much younger, were you part of any kinds of conversations where it was about beauty versus brains?
I guess like Nonto, the beauty part was never really like a big focus in the environment that I grew up in. I grew up in a family that had all kinds of, skin tones, and it was never really a big issue. But I grew up being called dark beauty, and I think it was a way of Uma wanting to emphasize that even though you are darker, I guess it's because my younger sister that's why she's called Pinky, because she was like light. And you know how people get drawn to lighter people. So my mom made sure that she did tell me that I am dark beauty.
You're raising something very important when you're talking about these terms like pinky or dark beauty or mavetane. I'm sure you guys have heard those terms, or mnyamane, And there's so much meaning that's put behind those words. But I think it's very important for young people to have these conversations amongst themselves as well. And if you guys are united and you know what beauty is, and you don't allow the standard that has been set by whatever society to tell you if you are beautiful or not, don't shy away as well from the conversations of colorism, because it's only through having those conversations that you can work through them and you have your own stand about, no, for me, this is what matters and this is what's beautiful to me. And also self-appreciation. I think that's also very important. Talking about how it was when we were younger, I'd like to know about your upbringing. Maybe you can start, Gugu. What was your childhood like?
Sure, yeah. So I grew up Esikawini. Esikawini is a township in KwaZulu-Natal, further north, close to Richards Bay and Mpangeni. I went to the local primary schools and the lower primary. I went to a Kapozini primary school. Never went to crash, guys. I never went to crash. I went straight into sub A and sub B. 56 in the class. I think first year I must have come out number 53 or something. Because I skipped early childhood development. So very important. So I was thrown into grade 1, sub A. By grade 3, which is standard 1, I was number 8, 10. We'll walk whether come rain or come sunshine. I remember days when we'll like hold the briefcase, those brown ones, and put on my raincoat, had to cross 2 rivers to get to school. But I thought that was the norm, it was the norm. I didn't know any better. Township educated up until grade 7. Grew up with my grandmother. We used to, every time she used to be a vendor on the streets. This used to be a reverend's wife, right? But umkhulu washona. So my grandmother had to, raise the family. And as part of making extra income, she used to sell these things on the streets. That's why I respect people who are street vendors, because it means you providing for your family. And we used to, like, after school, go help her with selling, take turns selling with ugogo. There's something that as you grow older, like, I couldn't reconcile this. Like, Granny used to be like Mama Gamfundis, right? Pretty at in church, very, very respectable. But then during the week, she'll be at the stands and selling. And I didn't see anything wrong with it. There was nothing wrong with it, and didn't realize there was, a disparity. Only when I'm older, I'm like, what was happening here? And just drawing from, like, there was nothing too low for her to do in order to provide for her family. Got the opportunity to go to a high school in a boarding school for girls that was run by the Dominican nuns. And I think that's where my life, the trajectory of my life changed, just being in that environment. I'm very grateful for that opportunity to have gone through that. Yeah, so that's my childhood. Long story.
Yeah. I think it's very important what you're saying about your grandmother as well. You can't judge a book by its cover, but I think it's evident that your grandmother understood, and I think especially if you are a vendor in the community, you are definitely part of the community. So I'm sure they got to experience her with the community on those, both those fronts, at church and, on a regular day. So it's very important that, you are able to show up for what is required. So if you need to be out in the streets hustling, you've got that energy, you've got that spirit about you, and you go ahead with that attitude. If you need to be still, then you are also able to do that. So I think it's very important, learning how to be flexible and knowing what the moment requires and being able to adapt yourself to that moment. Nonto, what was your worst childhood chore? The one that you did not like, and what has it taught you all these years later?
Probably the garden. So, raised by a single mom, 4 siblings, the boys the youngest. So there were no boys' roles, girls' roles. We did them all, including my brother in the kitchen and us in the garden. So I went to boarding school from grade 1.
Jeez.
Because of needs. My mother was a school inspector, and the only biology one in KZN for black schools at the time. So she covered north to south of the whole length and breadth of KZN.
Sure.
So all of us went into boarding school from grade 1. Quite a thing.
Sure.
My therapist called it abandonment. But holidays would be at home. And then my mother would blast music at like 6 a.m. And we have to be out in the garden. And she had green fingers. We had a huge garden, huge property at Clermont. And so the flowers and grass, and then the one side is veggies, and sure, Gugu tended to slit my wrist. I hated it. The music is loud, you're all groggy, and we had to be in the garden. So that was my worst chore. Okay. And funny enough, now, I wouldn't say I have green fingers as such, but during COVID, I started a vegetable garden that we eat from constantly. I'm always posting on Insta my big vegetables and what have you. And, the cost of food and everything. It is just such a relief to have some stuff coming out of the garden.
Buhle, I'd like to find out from you, because now we're taking it way back now with the childhood and where it was. How were you in high school? Were you the brainy one, the athletic one, the deep one? How would they characterize you? The extrovert? Or have you always been like this? Or, were you also Papa from Jump? So at school, you were known as the
brainy one, a papai. So I was the brainy one because I had to sit down. I wasn't clever. Like I wasn't, top number 1. I could do 2 or 3, top 5. Because early on in my life, I decided at standard 5 that I want to be a CA when I saw Cindy Zilwa coming to our school. So I wanted to be an athlete just to satisfy my dad. And then at some point in high school, I was like, I'm not doing this because to be a CA, this is not the way. So I was the brainy one, but a papai.
So the journey into becoming a CA, please tell us about that.
Yeah, in our school is Zimele Junior Secondary School. At standard 5, we had to decide going into standard 6, which route are you taking? Geography, history, maths, accounting, and I was very good in accounting. And Utiko being Utiko, that year we were introduced to this lady. She comes into our school. She says she's the second Black female chartered accountant in South Africa. Huh? I mean, really? Why me too? I want to be one of them. And only recently I found out Ukuti. The reason why she went to our school was when the 4 founders of the African Women Chartered Accountants started this organization. They were all told to go back to where they come from and tell the people about this profession.
Nonto, so for you, are there any challenges that happened during your childhood or even as you were a teenager in high school regarding what it is that you wanted to do in your life and you thought, I'm not quite sure about this route, or somebody is pressuring you to do something else? What kind of challenges did you have at that time when you were their age?
I wasn't so definitive like Buhle about this is what I want. It was more of what was I good at, maths, accounting. So I just sort of, you applied at varsity for various things, got accepted for accounting, did that, did well. So there was no pressure from anyone externally at home, friends or what have you about my choices. I think if I talk about a challenge, it was once deciding to be a CA and following the path and then not attaining it. After being perpetually top of class and what have you, and then starting to fail. And it's interesting because in retrospect, when I look back at how it's all played out, is that I was shining and putting more effort because you write it when you already started articles, so you're already working. And it was basically not prioritizing my studies as I should have and prioritizing the actual work. So I shone there and I got promoted and I even made partner at Deloitte, but I wasn't a CA. So it was to accept within myself that I'm a doer. And I could have, I guess, gone back and written the exam. And I can write exams and pass, as I showed through my 12 years of school and varsity. But one of my mentors, once spoke to me about playing to your strengths. You get asked, what are your weaknesses? And yes, you should be aware of them. But is it worth putting the time in becoming perfect, bringing your weaknesses up here? It's like mitigate your weaknesses so that they don't trip you up, but strengthen your strengths. So that is when I decided that, okay, I'll strengthen the muscle that's already strong. I'll carry on being a doer, working excellently, good work ethic and all of that. And it has still led to me, progressing. But having said that, since you're at this age, if you have chosen to be a CA or anything else, do give it your all. Decide on what you want to do and go for it.
I think that's a very important thing to say, Nonto, because what we always say actually to young people who are in our programs is that there is no one straight route towards success. And even the most successful people will tell you about the numerous failures that they have had. In fact, they will say the one way to measure success is actually even through your failures, because if you fail, that means you've tried and tried and tried until you eventually get it right. This year, when they were talking about the number of spots at the varsities, was the first time I had seen something like that. But you'll find like 50,000 people have applied for like 1,000 spots. And now how do you actually then navigate through that? How do you cope with that reality, knowing that the spots are so limited? So it's very important to know how to expand yourself so that even if something doesn't go in the one way that you might have thought, there's other ways of going around it and finding yourself and finding your success within that. Everybody has their own journey to take. And I think it's just important to make sure that you follow through with that journey. Now, speaking of some of these bends and twists and turns, what kind of twists and turns did you experience, Gugu, that have actually gotten you to the point where you are today?
Coming from being, top student in KwaZulu-Natal, whatever, and getting into university, and all of a sudden the marks disappeared. Why are these people that I'm finding there doing so much better than I'm doing? I'm supposed to still be getting the 70s or I'm in the 80s and the 90s. And it just came to the realization in terms of the education system that we come from. And I'm grateful that it gave me a door into tertiary, into the university education. But it is very important that government invests in our education system, like proper. There's a lot of us who came like bright-eyed into university. We want to shine, we want to do this. We get there, oh my God, it's not as easy as high school, because the education system did not prepare us. But I made sure that I'm going to fight through it, right? Appreciate 50% when I get it. It's going to get me into the next
round
course, right? I get like, Gugu, your 90s, okay, thing of the past. Let's work towards, just getting through this thing in a way that will make you realize your goals. I've been working for this firm since during university days. I started working for PricewaterhouseCoopers. Every holiday, I'll spend a week working at PricewaterhouseCoopers. So I was this darling coming in, doing first year of articles, and then boom, I failed my first board exam. It was because of the cricket World Cup.
Okay.
It was because of the cricket World Cup. I taught myself cricket, how to count the cricket scores, and got completely sidetracked with the studies. And so I attribute my failure to you were concentrating on learning other things. You learned cricket. You learned what the overs mean, what the runs mean, whatever wickets, whatever mean, and you forgot the board exam to prepare for. But that taught me, Gugu, get up, pick yourself up. There's next year to try. You go for it. So falling. It's all about how many times can you rise. You can't just keep lying down when you fall. Pick yourself up and try again.
Yeah.
And I did exactly that. So, yeah.
Wow.
We should tell them there at Cricket South Africa
Cricket South Africa.
that it's their fault. Buhle, how did you deal with peer pressure when you were in high school?
You know what? I wanted to touch on Gugu's thing, being up before. I passed my board exams 4th time, Gugu. Part 1.
Seems like 4 is a lucky number for a lot of accountants. Most of them pass it like the 4th time.
I wanted to make sure that these kids hear that. You know what Gugu said? It doesn't matter how many times you fall, but how many times you rise. Peer pressure for me came in a very positive way because we were competing to pass. We wanted to get those awards. I wanted to see my dad smile there at the auditorium. The auditorium year to get, I was outside in the sun. They would take the chairs and put them outside as in high school in Umtata. But it was nice to be challenged like that, to say, guys, if I don't know economics, there's Nazo who was excellent in economics. If I don't know accounting, I call on my friend Zipo to say, show me how do I navigate this IFRS standard now? That's what they call them. I can't even remember those days what we called the standards. The peer pressure that I got was always to make sure that we made our parents proud. And Kubu Buhle was this serious, I wasn't a nerd, but I was just this serious person who wanted to become this chartered accountant. I was always put under pressure to make sure I excel. Yeah.
And I think it's important to note that peer pressure is not always in a negative way, because you can surround yourself with people who just push you forward to be the best that you can be. So moving on from the time you were in school, who are those people that pushed you in your life to be where you are right now?
My mom was a hard worker. She started working outside of Umtata when I was starting high school. I remember when touching on the failure part, when I was struggling to pass my board exams. Kanine, who asked you to be a chartered accountant? He was like, it was a conversation, but only when I put the phone down, I realized, but this guy. I actually remembered that it was me who asked him to go to Nkonkisizwe at the time. I don't know what they were called. And those days, we had all the big 4 firms in Umtata. And then my dad did research for me. I asked him to go, go ask him. He's friends with Mang, who's a CA or runs an audit firm. And he just reminded me of that journey to say, actually, what I'm doing, it's nobody else's dream. It's my dream. So if you're going through those legal failures and those downs, and into life is a graph, ladies. Ne? Life is a graph, up and down, up and down, up and down. So that constant reminder of this is not somebody else's dream. This is Buhle's dream. Made me wake up in the morning and work hard. And then there was a trick that they used to teach us. Do you remember at varsity, they used to tell us on top of your study desk or whatever, wherever you worked from, even if it's in the kitchen, whatever, you must always put your name in it. And you must put, if you want to be a doctor, you must always put Dr. Bamba. Put it somewhere visible, in your room, everywhere. If you want to be anything, must always put it next to your name because you are manifesting. That was one of the tricks that actually helped for Buhle to be where she is. But honestly, I think I was always inspired by my parents.
I remember there was a time when I was in high school, I think for a lot of us, when you'd ask someone who's their role model, they'll tell you 2 people. First of all, their mom. Secondly, Oprah. That was everybody's role model. Mentoring from the TV screen, which is so important, and it can actually also happen. That is why even within this platform, you'll never know what jewel that you'll drop that somebody's going to pick up and really implement in their lives towards success. So who are the people that pushed you to be you, Nonto?
Well, I'm going to say my mom as well. But yeah, my mother, as I said, was a single mom with 4 kids. She traveled a lot because of her job. We were all in boarding school. Despite her being a single mom, she just made it happen for us. And it wasn't, are you going to varsity? So which varsity are you going to? She didn't even have the money, but which varsity? Because it will come, it will work itself out. And it always did in the end. Yeah.
I was inspired by my mom. She literally also raised the 4 of us on her own. Because at some point, Dad left. So literally raised all of us on her own. And wow, she was a powerhouse, a go-getter. And, taught us so many values, working hard, going for what you want. No, your circumstance is not should not define you. So very grateful to Uma. Told a story about Ugogo, how Ugogo, go-getter. If I have to sell those peanuts and apples and oranges on the streets to provide, I'll do it, So very grateful to the women who raised us, as a family or as children. Yes.
And definitely, I think a lot of people, your inner circle is where you first find your initial strength, your initial motivation and support. And I mean, I know, that's the place where you strengthen even the character. The InnerView, live with Gugu Dingaan, Nontobeko Ndhlazi, and Buhle Hanise, sharing their life stories with Campaign for Girls. Join us for part 2.